Speaking of Arsenal, I mean, they've had, in my opinion, a tremendous window so far. They have brought in uh, Leandro Trossard, who I think is just a brilliant footballer. And that small cameo appearance, you just saw that in a team with the quality of Arsenal, I think he's just going to shine. They've brought in the talented young centre back Jacob, and his surname blows my mind. So I'm calling him Jacob for now, or Jacob for now, a young Polish centre back. Of course, there's talk about Declan Rice in the summer, and I'd love to get your take on that. But initially, there is now talk of a move that Fabrizio has said don't rule out something towards the end of the window, which is only a handful of days away. That's not like 3 or 4 weeks away. Don't rule and move out. Sky Sports have reported today that there could be a late up to £75 million bid from Arsenal for Brighton's Caicedo. What's your understanding of the situation? Of course, Chelsea are looking at him as well. We've actually got a poll running right now to see which of the two clubs he would choose if he had to pick. And 69% of our viewers think he would pick Arsenal over Chelsea. What's your take on this deal, Ben?
Well, we have to be very careful with the Arsenal interest because the valuation, and ultimately, if Arsenal didn't want to improve their structure and overall package for Mykhailo Mudryk and had what Mikel Arteta called discipline, then to presume that they're going to drop 75 million for Caicedo is optimistic. It would go against their strategy and very much be about getting a player that they might well be in for in the summer now in order to get one over Chelsea, but a value that is definitely exceeding the number that they want to pay. Whereas we know that Chelsea are prepared to pay big. So in terms of actually hitting a number where Brighton might sell, Chelsea are in a stronger position. Let's not forget that Chelsea have already had a rejected bid, which was 65 million, as I understand it, all in, 55 million guaranteed. So already anybody coming in for Caicedo knows that they've got to start at the mid-60s or they've got to have an incredible structure if they want to go any lower. And I reported the Chelsea Caicedo interest all the way back in December exclusively, and nothing has really changed towards the end of the window. The price Brighton want is 75 million plus. It might even be 80 million. The 100 million being quoted is more a way of warding off suitors. And also, it's a little dig again at Chelsea, because when Graham Potter was the Brighton manager and Liverpool inquired around the 42 million mark, Graham Potter joked that owner Tony Bloom would want 100 million. And now, guess what? 100 million is being bandied around, half jokingly, half seriously, but 75 million plus, depending on the structure, is the number to look out for over the next few days. And even then, Brighton can set the price at what they want, and they can hang on to Caicedo if they don't get a replacement in, because it's ultimately how they work. So the model will allow for a sale now, because Brighton accept when a player wants to go and a number is hit, that if it's in everybody's interest, they'll do a deal. But it's not in Brighton's interest if they don't find a replacement first. So the fact that Brighton are looking at replacements, I think, tells you that there's something moving here. But it still isn't a guarantee, because Brighton are very shrewd and sensible. And even though they know they're not going to get this type of valuation for Caicedo in the summer, they also know that there'll be more suitors and more time to get in a replacement. And given that they're in the conversation for European football, that might be a factor. The other thing I just want to point out before we delve into Chelsea and Arsenal specifically is that Caicedo's no Wesley Fofana, in the sense that he's not going to refuse to train. He's not going to force his way out of the football club. He's more humble, and he is, to some extent, focused on Brighton. But that said, he would want the move away if terms can be agreed. So then Caicedo's only just got a new agent come in, although that is to be taken with a pinch of salt, because I can guarantee you that these agents, which are Epic Sports and Football Division, it's a collaborative partnership. So effectively there's two agents, and you might hear it as Football Division or you might hear it as Epic Sports. But either way, it's two agents collaborating, and they want to get a deal done, and they want it done now. And it's as simple as that. But they haven't really only come in now. Formally, they've come in now, but they've been putting out feelers and they've been working on Caicedo's behalf for months. And every single club in the market says exactly the same thing, that these agents have always said they'll be in officially towards the end of January, but they've been working on Caicedo for months. So that's a key point, because it's not as much of a scramble in terms of trying to get something done. So then, is it going to be Chelsea or is it going to be Arsenal? Well, again, with Arsenal, they've got to meet a valuation, and everybody connected to the deal says the same thing, that even 75 million plus is crazy money. And therefore, when everybody connected to the deal, sources on the player's side, sources on the agent's side, sources on the buyer's side, sources on the seller's side, even privately admit it, and on top of that, clubs circling. Liverpool are not in the conversation because they even think that 65 million is far too high. So Arsenal are going to have to be really un-Arsenal to succeed. And obviously, if they put down that kind of valuation, Brighton have got a serious decision to make. But I feel like they would almost be changing their strategy to react to Chelsea, which in many ways is a compliment. Chelsea are still the favourites, though. And I've been told repeatedly that a move to Chelsea for Moises Caicedo is seen by the player as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, in terms of the package, in terms of the project, in terms of the fact that Graham Potter is there, who he knows and likes and respects. So Moises Caicedo has had his head turned by Chelsea. Arsenal can influence that. They're later into the conversation. We've seen this with Mudryk, where he spent all summer and all winter saying he wanted Arsenal, but then actually he was quite happy to join Chelsea because Arsenal left the race and he had a straight choice to make between Shakhtar or between Chelsea. So we shouldn't rule out the move to Arsenal, but make no mistake, right now, it's Chelsea that's turning his head. It's Chelsea that have put down a formal offer. It's Chelsea that are still considering a late window move to meet the valuation, but it's difficult because Brighton are no mugs. Brighton will cite the Cucurella deal at 62 million. They'll cite the Mudryk deal, different players in different positions, but they know that Chelsea are prepared to spend that. I'm just not sure whether Arsenal will hit a valuation that seriously makes Brighton think we need to sell right now compared to the summer. And the last thing that I just wanted to add as well, which is another little bit of new information for context, is that those familiar with this deal and directly involved in conversations are all saying the same thing. If Tchouaméni goes to Real Madrid for a 70 million euros upfront fee and roughly 100 million euros package, then there's no way on earth that Moises Caicedo should be a penny more than that. So that's just worth bearing in mind as a yardstick. 70 million euros guaranteed fee, which is something in the region of 62 million. Anything above that, there's nobody I've spoken to outside of Brighton. Suitors, agents, players, industry insiders, those directly in the deal, those connected to Chelsea, those connected to Liverpool, those connected to Arsenal. Every single person has said the same thing, which means that that is the yardstick that is actually being used and quoted in conversations. So therefore, if it becomes above that 62 million guaranteed fee plus whatever the add-ons are, then clubs are very wary to do business. And therefore, if Brighton keeps saying we want 80, we want 85, nothing's going to get done in the final days. So I think that we now need to see whether a Chelsea or an Arsenal put their money where their mouth is. And an offer of 70, 75 will make things very interesting because Brighton will have a serious decision to make. Right now, they're dismissing it. They're saying not for sale. But they're also looking for replacements, which is a clue that for the right number, they will sell now. And therefore, this one is going to go right down to the wire towards the last days, hours, minutes, if not seconds of the transfer window.
It's good. It's certainly going to be an interesting one, as you say, because listen, I take your word as read around like Chelsea are leading that race from a personal standpoint where the player's head's been turned. But we know, Arsenal, the position they're in, title favourites in many people's eyes, definitely in the Champions League next year. They can get into the shell of Caicedo, and the shell, for anyone that doesn't know, is Cockney for ear. Getting into his shell and have a conversation with him. These things could change. And I'm quite happy this deal has come around like this because there was a lot of excitement in the 2 weeks leading up to the window opening. The first week and a half, it was crazy. And then you had the Mudryk deal, Trossard, and then it kind of died a bit. And I love the transfer window. So I'm kind of happy that there is one like this that's kind of reared its head in this way. There is a super chat here actually before I move on to the next part of Arsenal news. It says, I feel sorry for Brighton, but I must say I'm impressed with our recruitment. Getting Caicedo would mean we've poached two of Brighton's best players. 75 million looks reasonable considering inflation. And obviously, Nikhil, and I also understand where he's coming from. There's also this element of the Premier League clubs always seem to get charged more than teams abroad. There's so much more money here now. And what does that do to the actual market? It skews it. So thank you, Nikhil.